Welcome to Revamped episode 3. So I actually filmed this entire podcast and totally deleted it because two things. One, I get so caught up in what I'm saying and so focused on what I am trying to portray and just say out loud to the point where I get so robotic and kind of monotone. So that was one reason. Secondly, Canon just dropped some brand new news today about the Canon R5 and I've been following that all day. So I really want to talk about that camera too. And it's also changed around some parts of the tier list. So I figured I would update the whole podcast as of today, which is July 9th, 2020. Now I got this whole idea of making a tier list for cameras by actually watching a recent development on the World of Warcraft Shadowlands update.
For the Horde.
I don't play WoW anymore. I used to back in the day. Actually, the last time I played was in Cataclysm. But I've followed along avidly because I just like watching the PvP battles and just the different updates that Blizzard is doing to their games. Which is why, leading me up to today, I want to address a very common question that I get often. Actually, I'm sure a lot of photographers and filmmakers get this same question very often, but I wanted to address it in a different way. Plus, since this channel has been all about photography and board games, I figured why not make a tier list of that? Because now you're really combining the two hobbies. Tier list for like deck builders and all that sort of stuff, and gear for photography. Why not have the culmination of both? Now, secondly, people are approaching this tier list in a couple of different ways. Some of you are looking to get your very first camera, which is very exciting because I remember the feeling of when I got my first camera. It's just a feeling that you remember for life. And that is one of those moments that you want to make a very informed decision about it. But for some others, maybe you're trying to keep in mind what gear or what camera to look for next. So you always have kind of this goal, at least for me, I always have some kind of goal of what I want to get next. It's like next on your shopping list or your Christmas list. So this is, I would say, the Christmas list for photographers. And thirdly, I want to let you know what exactly to expect from the rest of this episode. I am recommending only Canon cameras because I myself have only shot with Canon. So I don't want to speak on it unless I'm confident about that subject, which is why it's going to be all Canon. But that doesn't mean that you have to get necessarily this exact camera that I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes. You can always look for brand equivalents in like Nikon or Sony. I mean, come on, you have Brandon Wolfel who shoots in Nikon. You also have Becky and Chris and Manny Ortiz that shoot in Sony. So in the end, it will always come down to what you make of your tool. And lastly, I want to explain this tier list in terms of first, where you kind of gauge yourself as a photographer, filmmaker, videographer, and then explain the camera that is best suited for that level of experience, hence why I am dividing it into a tier list. Reason why is because you are making an informed decision, and these are expensive pieces of gear. Photography in general is a very, very expensive hobby, profession, career. Sometimes it's a full-on investment and it's not an easy choice. So I do want to give you at least a different perspective on how to approach that. That way you can make the decision that is best fit for you. Now, let's get started with some elevated sound effects as we are progressing in episode 3 of this podcast series of Revamped. Starting off first with tier 1, the bronze tier. The camera I would recommend for this is one I'm holding right now, and that is your phone. Our phones nowadays shoot in 4K 60. Some cameras aren't even capable of that kind of quality yet. That means they don't only shoot in super high res, but they can also slow it down. So if you bring down this footage, which is in 60 frames per second, into like Adobe Premiere or any kind of video editing software, and you slow it down from 60 to 24 frames per second, that means you get a nice, soft, smooth, slow motion with something that you use to make a phone call. That is insane. It is pretty crazy and also a little bit scary how blurred these lines are between your phone and a DSLR or mirrorless camera nowadays. Now you can consider yourself in this tier if you've never owned a full-on camera before, if you've never done any kind of professional shoots yet. Maybe you're looking to progress into the photography hobby and you want to learn more about pictures. Maybe you've heard a couple of terms tossed around like depth of field or f-stop or rule of thirds. But bottom line, you are interested in photography and in moving your craft forward. And you want to learn how to take better pictures and video. So that's why for the bronze tier, tier 1, I don't recommend you getting any kind of camera yet because this is the perfect time for you to just sit down and practice with your phone. Why? Because your phone has no settings to play around with, assuming you don't use like a third-party app. If you use just your native camera app, you don't have any way of controlling f-stop, ISO, shutter speed, and all you have is one click of a button, practically, and maybe the brightness slider at the most. So that is the perfect time for you to practice with something that a lot of photographers have trouble with, and that is composition. That's probably one of the hardest things to learn in photography because there's no set standard for it. There are some general guidelines, but in reality, you just have to keep practicing until you develop that eye for it. So this is the time where you should practice one thing and do it very well. If you can master composition at the level of just using your phone, then you'll be ready to move on to a full-on camera. Because when you move on to a camera, then you're gonna have a bunch of other settings to fiddle around with, and that's going to kind of cloud your judgments. So in my opinion, and actually what I did myself, was I really practiced with my phone and tried to understand composition, maybe even lighting, maybe even depth of field to a point where we can kind of use portrait mode on our phones. If we can start understanding that and start taking really good pictures with it, with just a simple tool that we already have and not spend any kind of extra money and funds on it, then we'll be in good shape to move on to the next tier. So I would try to keep the mentality in your head. And once you have enough experience under your belt by doing some portrait sessions, maybe around family or friends, and maybe you'll shoot a couple landscapes and start doing some board game photos and start making those stand out a little bit, then we can move on to tier 2, which is the silver tier. In tier 2, you are overusing your phone. You're ready to dive into full-fledged camera settings. Maybe you want to start experimenting with B-roll and starting to understand how to fine-tune camera movements, especially if you want to do like reviews and overlay a lot of B-roll in your videos. Or maybe you just want to like document things here and there, make a couple more vlogs. Either way, you're ready to elevate the quality that you can get from your phone. Now, potentially, if you really understand your camera gear, you can even push this camera to get some professional paid work. And that camera I would recommend for this is the Canon M50. And here's why. On your phone, you have very limited capabilities. You can't really manipulate your colors well, so you can't really edit too much because all the colors are oversaturated, especially in iPhones. And as convenient as our phones are, being able to do portrait mode with like a blurred background, it kind of clouds our judgment. Just because our pictures have a blurry background doesn't mean it's a good picture. So when you're ready to move on to a full-on camera, this is actually a mirrorless camera. The Canon M50 just got updated this year as of 2020. And now you have a ton more control over different factors. For example, the M50 has something called an auto lighting optimizer. All that means is that when you're taking pictures in low light and you kind of get those grainy, really very fuzzy looking images, the M50 is able to reduce that kind of noise, especially when you're shooting in conditions where it's kind of dark. Canon's also improved the dual pixel autofocus. So all that means is that when you're focusing on a subject, whether it be a meeple that you're putting on a rock or a facial expression, it's able to lock in on the eyes or on the subject pretty clearly. ISO range on this camera goes to 51,200, which is pretty insane. I don't think it can actually push it to that point. That's just its maximum capabilities because at least on the Canon 80D, the max ISO you can get is 800. So I'm assuming with this new model of the Canon M50, you can probably push it to around 1250 for ISO. That means you're able to make in-body lighting a lot brighter than normal. So if you're taking pictures in the dark, and you don't have any kind of light source, your camera is able to manipulate that light by using something called ISO. The more you crank up ISO, then the brighter your picture will be. But the downside to that is that there's a limit to how much you can increase it, because the more you increase artificial lighting, aka ISO, then the more grain and the more fuzziness that you're gonna get in your picture. So that's why I say 1200 is probably like the range you're gonna fluctuate in, maybe 1600 at most. I don't think it can really go to 51,000 without introducing any kind of grains. So I would be interested in seeing how much ISO that this new M50 can really push to before it gets any kind of noise. Now next, it also has a flip screen. So flip screen you won't see often in any kind of professional grade cameras, but flip screens are so useful because you're able to get different angles that you can't get with one that doesn't have a flip screen. For example, imagine if your camera, if you can't see what you're taking behind the lens, but you're trying to go like underneath a rock or a boulder, or you're going from like behind a waterfall and you can't exactly look behind the camera. That's what a flip screen is useful for. It allows you to get into unique little crevices, especially when doing board game shots, because those are always tiny pieces that we kind of stick everywhere, right? So with the flip screen, you're able to get a lot more creative. The M50 also comes with its own lens, so that saves a ton of money. It's not the best lens, but it does come with it already, so that's nice. For video, it shoots 4K 60 like I mentioned earlier. That's some insane quality for a little tiny package like this. 4K 60, I know I mentioned like you can also do it on your iPhones, but 4K is not equivalent across the board. 4K in an iPhone is not the same as 4K in an M50. Definitely not the same as 4K in a 1DX. So at least in terms of 4K quality, I'm pretty confident that the 4K in an M50 is much better than 4K in an iPhone. So that means that you can shoot pretty high quality slow motion. It does go to 60, but if you do want to go to 120, this camera offers that as well, which means you can shoot in very, very buttery smooth slow motion. Problem is that you can only shoot that in 720p. So even if the resolution for that has been dropped, I think that's okay for this tier of cameras, at least, that I'm recommending, because you don't want to depend solely on slow motion. If you get a camera with the best kind of slow motion, you're going to automatically depend on slow motion instead of understanding how to shoot in faster frame rates. Now, on top of that, the Canon M50 also has Wi-Fi capability, which you definitely cannot undervalue, especially if you are out in the field and you just want to take pictures for social media and you want to transfer it over to your phone. Makes it super convenient. You don't need a laptop because then you can just transfer it directly from your camera straight to your phone, upload it to Instagram, Twitter, wherever you're using social media. So it's super convenient in that sense. On top of that, it's very travel friendly because it's super small. And the last thing I want to mention about this camera is actually the lens that it comes with. So the lens that it comes with is image stabilized, which means that it helps a lot when you're doing handheld shots. You won't get footage that is as shaky and your photos won't look that distorted because you have a few added stops of stability from that lens. It also is a zoom lens, which is great, especially for beginners, since this is a beginner level camera. So it's convenient because you're able to punch in, punch out. Now, it doesn't give amazing bokeh like that blurred background, that nice, smooth, buttery blurred background that we always want because it is at f3.5. The lens though is also STM, which means it's super quiet and silent. That's always helpful, especially when you are recording video and you don't want any kind of sound. Or maybe you're doing some wildlife photography and you're going very, very up close to like a hummingbird and you don't want all of that noise, any kind of noise to distract animals or that just gets in the way. That's always convenient. So that's what an STM motor does. It allows for silent movement of the lens in and out. Okay, so let's say you're starting to gain experience under your belt with the Canon M50. Your overhead shots of board game pieces are okay. They don't look that great because that is one major weakness of the M50. The footage looks good. It's not great. But I mentioned it for tier 2 because it's such a great and incredible learning tool, especially since you have to really fine tune your settings and you really have to understand your environment in order to maximize the capabilities of this camera. But now you are fairly confident in your abilities in taking solid pictures and in taking very, very good videos because maybe you've made a ton of good YouTube videos and people are giving you good feedback and you're taking very high quality photos that are composed well and lighting's done great. But one major limitation is just the quality of the image itself. Composition's there, lighting is there, theme is there, everything that you need is there and you're understanding all those kind of factors. Now, what's holding you back and what's separating you from professional level quality and kind of amateur or enthusiast level quality, that is the camera itself. When you can gauge yourself and understand that those are your limitations, then it's time to move on to the next tier. Always a fun time to upgrade. Say hello to tier 3, the gold tier. The gold tier is the Canon 80D. So the Canon 80D is one I'm holding in my hand right now for those that are listening in. But the Canon 80D was my very first camera, and if you've heard the first podcast, I talked all about my story behind this one. It holds a special place in my heart because it was my first camera. But the 80D is a lot heavier than the M50. But of course, with a bunch of new features and capabilities, then of course it's going to get heavier. The Canon 80D, I would say arguably, is an intermediate level camera. But even if it is intermediate, it's one that you can definitely push to the professional level quality, which I've definitely done. So the 80D is a crop body. What that means is that it's pushing the lens to a further distance. Not really pushing, but more like multiplying, which essentially is the same thing. So it's a crop factor by 1.6. So that means whatever lens that you put on there is going to multiply the distance by 1.6. So if I were to put a 50mm lens on there, multiply it times 1.6, you get a 80mm lens. That is a double-edged sword. In general, I feel like the 80D is a double-edged sword. It can work so well with you, but can also work terribly against you. So a ton of my Instagram feed before, and even all my videos actually from Vindication and before that, were all shot on the Canon 80D. So it can take some really nice high quality photos and videos. Now that's why I'm recommending all these cameras, because they're solid hybrids. Whether you're interested in photo or whether you're interested in video, they do a good job in both. So even if the 80D can take some really good quality videos and photos, it does come at a cost. So let's talk about the cost of that first. One major setback is if you're planning to take pictures of landscapes, be prepared to lose half the mountains that you're photographing. And that is so frustrating, especially when I went to Banff. I took pictures in Rain Lake and I just couldn't get the whole scene in focus. And it does suck. It really does. But again, you take it with a grain of salt, and it is ultimately still a learning tool for you to move on to the next level. But that's one major thing that the 80D taught me. You make the most of what you have, right? So whatever you could fit in frame, you made sure that it was the best part of that frame. So in essence, you are again playing with composition as you're kind of revisiting the same things that you learned playing with your phone, which is what I did. In terms of video, it doesn't shoot in 4K. It doesn't shoot in 120 FPS, so you can't get that buttery smooth slow motion. But don't let that fool you. This is one of the most versatile cameras, and it's still one of my favorite cameras to this date, and here's why. You can take professional level portraits. You can take buttery smooth, wallpaper worthy, frame worthy board game photos. Your product photography, super dreamy because everything's so out of focus because it is a crop body, so that's one way you can take advantage of it. Your landscape's still manageable, not the best, but if done well, you can still compose very nice shots from what you have in frame. It has a flip screen just like the M50, so it allows you to get those creative angles, allows you to vlog, allows you to see yourself, especially when you are recording yourself on a tripod. You don't need an external monitor. You can just use the camera itself. For video, it also really teaches you how to understand camera movements because since you're not working with 120 FPS, you are forced to really understand stability movements. So tucking in your arms, using a third point of contact by using a lens strap, things like that, you're able to understand because you have to be really in sync with this camera in order to get nice, smooth, slow motion. That means you have to really pinpoint and fine tune your motor movements, really, in order to get nice looking footage. And unlike the M50, it's not a mirrorless, it is a DSLR. So now you have a whole range of lenses that you can use because it has something called an EF mount. And Canon is known for their library of lenses that you can choose from. So the 80D takes advantage of that way more than the M50. So if you're looking for an intermediate level camera that you can really push to the professional level, then the 80D is the camera for you. I do want to mention though that if you're planning to do playthroughs of it and like show your whole table and show yourself playing, I don't know if this camera will be the best fit for you because like I said, it is a crop body. So it also depends on your living space and what lens you attach to your 80D because let's say I have the 80D and I put the 14mm on it. 14 times 1.6 is 22.4, right? So that distance you have to now consider because everything, again, is zoomed in. So for playthroughs, it may not be the best for it. Unless you're planning to use it maybe as a second camera to just show the components on the table, or if you're not showing yourself in it, then that's totally fine. But again, it does depend on your living space and it depends on what lens you attach to this particular camera body. Okay, and now we have reached the final tier. Welcome to tier 4, we'll call it the platinum tier. So now, if you reach this point, you can dial in all your settings blindfolded. You've done professional level work. You've gotten paid for a bunch of different video work and have done photo sessions and engagement sessions and have gone all this experience under your belt. The crop factor for you isn't unfamiliar anymore, but now it's more so of a nuisance. You know how to work with it. You know how to manipulate it. You know how to take advantage of it. But now that crop factor is holding you back. And it is time. It is time to go Super Saiyan and upgrade your camera to the final level. Well, the final consumer grade level at least. We're not talking about tier 10 with red cameras here, okay? We're still talking about DSLRs and handheld cameras. At this part of the podcast, I plan to talk about the Canon 5D Mark IV. But the thing is, Canon just dropped some huge news today and that's what I want to focus on. And that is the Canon R5. Let me get some dramatic music in here now. Oh my God, the things I can do with this camera is just insane. When I saw the commercial and the videos out for it today, I was just drooling like you would for a piece of delicious pizza from Domino's. Now, honestly, there's only one bad thing I can think of for this camera right now. So let me go ahead and get that out of the way. The only bad thing I can think about the Canon R5 is the space and storage. I'm assuming if you're interested in this camera right now, you've already understood all the terminology, so I'm not gonna put a filter on that anymore. This camera shoots 8K RAW and 4K 120, has IBIS, and who knows how many freaking stops of stabilization it has in total. Okay, it has 8, I know how much it has, but still. Now in terms of the video files in 8K, what I'm worried about is the storage space because when I shoot with 4K on the 1DX, I can in reality, only get like 24 minutes of footage worth before I have to go ahead and take time, dump it onto my computer, and then put it back inside the camera. So that is a feature that I'm worried about. Since it can shoot in 8K, how many actual minutes of that can the CF Express card actually store? So that's the new kind of card that it's using. It basically means that it is a very fast read and write speed. So your camera has no delay when it's shooting video or photos. There's no like black screen. It doesn't say, hold on, I'm writing, so it doesn't slow you down, especially using a CF Express card. On top of that, there's no point of getting this camera if you don't have a computer that can edit at that level. Especially, like for me, I would love to shoot in 4K all the time, especially since I have the capabilities to for the 1DX, but My computer can't even handle that anymore. So I have to definitely wait on this camera, unfortunately, until I get a better computer that can handle that 4K, 8K editing speed. But once I do, oh my God, I can't wait. Now, secondly, this isn't a make or break it for me, but it is kind of a letdown. Okay, honestly, it's not a letdown because what this camera packs in its tiny body is insane as to begin with. But I did slightly, part of me, I know other people do agree on this too. I know part of me wishes that it was a dual CF Express card slot. So it has one slot for the CF Express card. That's the one that can read and write the 4K and 8K videos really, really fast and take a bunch of pictures and process all that at once really, really fast. But the second slot is not a CF Express card. It is an SD card. So that is more convenient, but again, it just would have been a nice touch. Either way, 2 card slots, can't really complain too much. You've already asked for all these features and they've already included in, so I'm already appreciative of what's already inside. Now on top of that, in terms of battery, it uses the same LP6 battery, which is the same one as the 80D or LPE6N if you want to get technical. But it does have an option for a handheld battery grip if it's something that you don't want to change out often. That battery grip though does add a little bit more bulk to the body overall. Not a make or break a deal. It just depends on what you're shooting and where you're going, right? If you're at home, of course, you would only use the portable LPE6 batteries. But if not, then if you're out in the field and you don't want to change your batteries around, then you have the option to use a handheld battery grip. Okay, so the R5, get this, can shoot at 20 frames per second. Just let that sink in and swim around your mind for a second. The 1DX, which is a extremely professional grade quality camera, it's actually the one that is filming all this right now. The 1DX can shoot at 14 frames per second. In 2020, the year that this podcast has been recorded, you now have a camera that is half the size of a 1DX that can shoot at almost double the speed of a 1DX. It can shoot at 20 frames per second. That means if you were to drop dice in a water tank, you can get every single frame of the dice as it's falling into the water. That is insane speed. Like if you're dropping dice from seasons like I did in my Instagram photo recently, if you drop dice in there, it took me like 2 hours of trying, even with at 14 frames per second, which is still incredibly fast. But at 20, that would have probably cut the time down and who knows, maybe it would have cut half the time off that. If you were to just drop the dice once, bam, 100 photos, just like that. That is mind-blowing crazy. And as always with Canon cameras or with any cameras in general, they're always going to improve their autofocus. So autofocus in R5 is taken up to the next level yet again. Now it can recognize animals. It can even recognize specific species of birds, which is crazy. From what I was watching in the interview, I think it like recognizes the body of the animal first and then goes to the face and then goes directly to the eyes. So that kind of autofocus system is insane. On top of that, the autofocus range is now edge to edge because before you would have a specific amount of points, like what they would call autofocus points in a specific camera. So you would have 10, 25. This one is the entire screen worth of autofocus points. And the last thing I want to mention about the R5 is that it has IBIS. So it's about time. That just means it adds a bunch of extra stability. 5-axis IBIS with 8 stops of stability. That's more than even some lenses. So it renders gimbals and tripods and sliders even kind of useless, which is a good thing because you want to carry less and less as you are traveling. You always want to travel light. It's just more convenient for you overall. That's not to say that those tools are impractical now. It just makes the ease of taking pictures and videos much easier for you. I don't know if the R5 has Wi-Fi capabilities. I was trying to find that out, but there wasn't an official thing yet, or if it was, I didn't see it yet. I'm assuming it does, but that's just more convenient. If anything, it's not a make or break deal at all. Canon also released a separate model aside from the R5, and it's called the R6. Actually, yeah, I just looked it up. So the R5 can connect to Bluetooth, and it does both the 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz bands, but the R6 can only use 2.4. So they both have Wi-Fi capabilities. The R6 is a separate model from the R5. A couple major reasons why you would rather use the R6. 1, R6 is cheaper. 2, R6 does better in low light. And 3, if you're not interested in maximum video capabilities, if you don't want to shoot in 8K RAW and all that stuff, then of course go for the R6. You save some money there, and that's definitely another option for you as well. Again, these are both mirrorless cameras, so they are super light. The amount of lenses that Canon is coming out for mirrorless is going to expand, and honestly, I feel like it's the future going from here on out. For me, the 80D was my dream camera, and then the 1DX became my dream camera. After that, I didn't have a quote dream camera from there, but now we have the R5. So that is one thing that I am especially looking forward to And I can't wait to get my hands on that as soon as I upgrade my computer first so I can handle all that 8K raw editing first to begin with. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed all of the tiers that we talked about today. Tiers 1, 2, 3, 4 of cameras. I hope you found it useful and insightful. Those are the cameras that I would recommend across multiple levels of experiences. But one major takeaway, you always want to maximize the photography tool that you have at hand before moving on to the next one, because you just gain a whole new level of experiences and it's going to teach you so much more. That way, when you do upgrade, it's something that you look forward to and you can hit the ground running when you do move on to the next upgrade instead of fumbling around with different settings and trying to play this catch-up game that you've skipped if you automatically just move on without fully learning what your tool is capable of. So with that said, thank you all so much for tuning in or watching this video on YouTube. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on it and get episode 4 out to you next week. And I will see you all in Revamped episode 4.